Welcome to the Reticle Up podcast, where I, Threega Kenzie, will be interviewing competitive shooters, hunters, fishermen, archers, entrepreneurs, and outdoorsmen. Come learn with me as I interview people from all walks of life, in different disciplines, all across the world, from novices to professionals of all ages. No matter what, everyone has something they can teach you, so come join me on the journey. The Reticle Up podcast is produced in partnership with AmericanFirearms.org. American Firearms' mission is to recommend what works. We believe everyone deserves access to unbiased, helpful information about firearms, and our buying guides, product reviews, and learning resources are designed to help real people find the stuff that will work best for them. Check us out at www.americanfirearms.org. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reticle Up podcast. I'm here with Matt Nash. So we've been talking this about offline, but he's a master level production shooter. He'll be a GM eventually, but he's a competitive shooter, right? Eventually. But I'm excited to have you on to talk about nationals and IPSC and all these different things. So thanks for joining me.
Awesome. Thanks for having me here. I've been excited about this. I appreciate you rescheduling yesterday because of some work stuff.
They don't know that. It's all good.
Yep. But I appreciate it.
Yeah. So kicking things off, I know like the biggest thing on people's mind right now is like the nationals finish and going to world shoot. So I do want to back up and talk about nationals, like what that was like training for it. Did you meet your goals at nationals or fall short? And, you know, you shot with Super Squad this year, right?
I did. I think I got bummed because I'm on the world shoot team. There are a couple good shooters that were a little bit above me on finish last year. But I think I got the opportunity to shoot with my team, so that was great.
Awesome. Yeah. So tell me about that experience, though, for training, getting ready, mental game, all of that.
You know, I can't speak for most, but a lot of the GM squad, like Phil, Mason, Lutman, Brian Giovanni, Sal, and Jake, they're all like really close friends. I shoot other matches with them on a regular basis, so in a weird sense, it was kind of like home. I actually felt more comfortable.
Because you guys all live together in a very small home.
We do stay in. We are like an unofficial outside of shooting. We're like a team. We do always group up together and get Airbnbs and stuff. So, and that's kind of my point. So, like, I felt more comfortable shooting on the Super Squad, where I bet most people wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think I've shot enough majors to kind of remember to shoot my game on the mental side. So it didn't really bother me. I mean, I just shot with Mason and Jake and Sal at Pan American this year. So that doesn't really get to me too much. You know, I didn't really feel like much pressure or anything like that. It was cool to see some people I don't always get to see, but I shot with, I think, Nils, I shot at Area 8 with, which he's had a phenomenal year. So it's been cool to witness that a couple times. And then JJ, it's always awesome to shoot with him because he keeps the mood light and he's always laughing and making jokes. So, I mean, it was a great squad, but those are like my friends. So honestly, I get like a little disappointed when I don't get to shoot with them because part of it's being part of the community and friends, and you know, we don't all live in the same state. So like those are my opportunities to get to hang out with my friends and stuff. So, but you know, there's always some people that don't on the Boneyard team that don't make the Super Squad, and I actually miss shooting with like the Area 3 director to be the most interesting man in the world, Luke. I think, you know, I didn't get to shoot with him and Darren, who I usually get to shoot with as well. So I mean, it's all good, but that was a fun experience. It's interesting because I can kind of see firsthand. I mean, I've always known how they attack a major match, but it was cool to kind of watch their gears.
This was the first time you shot on the Super Squad.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
Yeah. At a national level, yeah.
Yeah.
I've shot with pretty much the guys. I don't know if they call them Super Squads, but yeah, at other majors. But yeah, it was interesting. So like I you know, the first day they're going out there just trying to have a clean day. It's not, you know, but by day 2 and 3, decisions are being made, you know, on how to push or how to move or how to capture some more points and climb up. And by the last 3 stages, the wheels either go off or people catch on fire. So it was kind of cool to watch that kind of shape up in person.
Yeah. I mean, and so what were your goals going into that?
My goals changed a little bit. My goal was to finish top 10, be 90% and shoot my best game. Reality speaking, I knew I hadn't had the opportunity to train to probably, win nationals, and I haven't really seen myself at the top, but I know I haven't also shot my best game yet, like for where my skills exist right now. So like that's all mental. That's between the years. So I was like, man, if I can just go in and shoot better than myself, there was one match that I did that, and I really pushed where my skills were. And I remember it was that Extreme Euro, and even Mason and Kaylee came up to me afterwards, like, "We're really proud of you because that's the best we've ever seen you shoot." And it wasn't that I had gained more skills; it was just mentally I was focused, and that feeling is what I wanted to deliver at nationals, because I feel like at World Shoot, the stress, the length of the match, there's going to be a lot more ups and downs. I feel like most people aren't going to shoot their best mentally. So like if I can, that's my biggest dividends. If I can find a way to mentally focus and bring out, my best, even at this point, that's going to do really well at World Shoot. So that was kind of my goal. And I didn't get a lot of time to train leading up to nationals like I thought. Work just had me traveling. I was taking off pretty much all of November and December from work. So I had a lot of overseas trips with my job. So I literally had just come back from London for 2 weeks prior, and then went right to nationals. So I don't think it necessarily hindered me, but it was interesting. I mean, I shot a lot of matches, Pan American right before that, and I shot a handful of majors this year and did really well. I won a few. So I felt confident. And the layoff, I always feel a little bit better. My hands relax, my muscles aren't as tense, and things kind of flow. So my goals this year kind of changed to like top 10, kind of 90% of the winter, comparing how hot the winter shot that year, because that can really set off the curve. Some people can go crazy, but I'm pretty happy with our finish. I had a really good beginning and a great end, and that's the middle was a little shaky. The middle, I think I started to try to push it and shoot beyond my skill level and not my game. And that was a great lesson. I think, the best lessons learned are those, and nationals served that purpose. It prepped me for World Shoot because now I can identify that and not let a whole day go by.
Right.
I can pick up on that after a stage, maybe even 2 at the most, and adjust and save that day.
Yep.
And Casey Reed came up to me after nationals, and like Mason and Kay at check, and said the exact same thing. That's where you need to be mentally. Day 3, after a day 2 to overcome that as well, and then just go back to shooting your game and have a very clean day. So I was pretty proud of that.
Do you think taking the deer head from the house helped you on day 3?
Of course, those guys keep it light. I mean, come on, this sport's fun.
Yeah.
The question is, will the deer head be at the Boneyard podcast when that starts up? That'll be question.
Nobody's mentioned it in the background. Were you there for that? Never mind. So not to digress, I wanted to talk about production too. Like, so you are predominantly, or is production been like the only division that you've ever shot?
Predominantly. Okay. I've shot PCC, limited, open, single stack, and carry optics. So I shot everything but revolver. But like
me both.
Which I actually want to do. I have a revolver,
me
so
too.
I actually want to shoot. But I don't have like a belt set up, so it'll probably never happen unless I, like JJ, I start pulling mags out of my back pocket at nationals. But I think he actually did that. But
I'll make us a belt we can like share, because I really want to shoot revolver.
Yeah, but not anything serious. I was testing out a PCC gun because our work was looking to switch our sub guns, and I wanted to run it through the ringer a little bit.
So would you say PCC is actual practical shooting?
Yes, but I don't think it pushes competitors. So, like in law enforcement, most law enforcement military don't get to train like USPSA competitors.
Right.
People often ask me, what do you think the average law enforcement officer shoots at? And, if you really take a true average, I would bet a Bravo, so if you look at a Bravo skill level, where what they've been able to achieve, right? Some good fundamentals. They just really haven't pushed themselves and to develop those skills a little bit. Like you put a PCC gun in their hands at the distances of a pistol match targets and stuff. Yeah, you instantly get better. Now in law enforcement military, you add stress onto that because in USPSA people don't shoot back at you.
Yeah.
Having a butt stock and a cheek well, you know, um, is a big advantage. When you start losing some visual perception and stuff like that because of stress, right?
Yeah.
And that's it's not the same stress as going to a major match. I mean, to kind of be that way. So yeah, like from a practical sense, a sub gun is real. The problem is you can't replicate the things that I'm talking about. Skill levels evolve. So like a Maximundi is not pushing that weapon system in a USPSA match like he could if we tailored a match for his ability, right? So I think it's tougher.
I like that Max doesn't have his real name. He's just Maximundi.
What's that?
I like how Max doesn't have a real name. It's just Maximundi. It's just his Instagram handle.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's awesome.
Max Leograndis. Yeah. That's funny. I just thought of that. Like I didn't realize I used his handle, but he'll get a kick out of that.
Right.
But so yeah, I think there is practical and military and law enforcement applications. We still field sub guns in our line of work. The ammo capacity and things like that. There's just a lot of tactical advantages for it.
Yeah.
I feel like just walking right into PCC after shooting 7 years of like production and pistol and learning those skills, it wasn't as interesting to me. It wasn't as challenging. However, I haven't competed against the best, so I'm that's going to be different. So yeah, I think it's cool. I'm interested to see what Max does with his matches that he's building in his program.
Yeah.
Will it fit that weapon system, that platform better?
I think to get him over on the East Coast is the problem. Right now it's in like Texas and Utah and Arizona, and we need it out here.
Yeah. So that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about with production, the gun you run, what modifications you've made. I know people always ask about guns and gear, so if you want to share that, you got it here with you.
Yep, CZ Shadow 2s. I've shot double single action since I started USPSA. I started with a Glock 34 just because I carry one at work, not a 34, but a Glock. Mm-hmm. But there are things I didn't like about the Glock. I don't get that choice at work. So I was like, oh. And in the Marine Corps, I shot a Beretta. Mm-hmm. And I was comfortable with the double single. So I got a CZ SP01 was my first gun that I got. I think I talked to JJ, was one of the first like pro shooters that I saw. He came to Fredericksburg for like Area 8 and I saw him shooting it. I got to see it and I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll get that. Shot Tamfo for a little bit. That was more out of curiosity. I needed a second gun and I bought a Tamfo. It was hard to get a second one at that back then. They were kind of hard to get. So I finally got a second one. And then my buddy Dave Wampler, who was shooting, had only one CZ. He's like, why don't you use some of your CZ? You shoot Tamfo, I'll shoot CZ. And it was just, they were very similar.
Just like a swapsies.
Yeah, so I gave him my CZ, which I think he still has to this day. My SP01 target. He turned it into a carry optics gun. But I went back to CZ because there are things I didn't enjoy about the Tamfo. It's a great gun. I think it's personal preference. But one of the things is their trigger guard was always, it's squared off. This is a little rounding, but there's a little bevel right here. And theirs was sharp. And that would cut into my thumb. And I built a callus up from all the dry fire and shooting. And it would cut that callus and I'd actually start bleeding. And then my grip would change because I had a wound, essentially, if you will.
Yeah.
And, people can make fun of me for having sissy hands. It's just a lot of repetition. Yep. I wanted a gun that didn't make me think about that stuff. And the one thing that CZ always does, they bevel this. And in IPSC, you can't make modifications. In USPSA, I could have probably just filed that. No one would have noticed. But I was afraid in IPSC, they would see that I changed that.
Right.
So I got this one. There was some other issues I had with the Tamfo that I could have probably tuned out. I spend enough time. I don't like spending time on guns, which is probably why I'll never be an open shooter. But I think their double action is a little bit shorter of a throw. So like if I can make it like that would be a Tamfo throw. This is a CZ throw. And that makes a difference on primers. And back then I was loading on a 650. You couldn't really crush the primer that well.
Yeah.
And I would get light strikes if I used anything other than Federal. There you go, Luke. There's a plug for you, buddy. But then Federals are hard to find, right?
Yeah, I have a lot right now, but Green Top is the one that's getting it in.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go to CZ again because they have a longer throw, and I never had that problem. I could run pretty much any primer. Now I have a 1050, probably not as big of a deal because I can kind of crush the primer a little bit. But I don't like spending a lot of time on getting my guns running. That's another reason why I
likes it. But you're right, open is not fun for that. Yeah.
But with the Shadow 2s, these run pretty much forever. I mean, I might have to change out the barrel at one point, because I really wore it out, but I don't have to worry about my mag well getting beat up. I can change the grips to fit mine, which I played with a couple, throughout the years, but I've pretty much settled on these scales to profile. Mm-hmm. They have some new ones. I'm playing with them still. I'm hoping, I'm still asking you in if these are going to be legal for World Shoot. I'm really, really nervous on it. So I'm going to take the newer versions, which aren't scaled.
Yeah. Because that'd be fun to go overseas and then find that out and be like, bye.
That's kind of how it happened at Pan American this year. But then they ended up letting them go after they kind of hounded me to change them. So I was like, oh. What? So like Jake got to use his scales, but I changed mine back to Henning's because the guy I went to wouldn't let me use these.
That seems unfair and not figured out for a major match. But what do I know?
I know.
Okay.
But I'm asking him, man. I told him, hey, they've allowed these at Extreme Euro. They've allowed these at Pan American. There's no way within the same year they should not allow them at World Shoot.
Right.
I think they don't like the holes. It's not so much they claim the profile's thicker, but I don't think they like the holes, the look of it. They think it's like dangerous or too flashy or something. I don't know.
I can't.
Which I actually like the holes, not for the look, but I don't have to use as much pro grip.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't use like a spike for purchase. Your hand sucks into it.
Yeah.
So, and not using a lot of pro grip keeps my hands kind of going a little bit longer.
Well,
so yeah.
It helped at the Pan American where you had to put your hands in water. You didn't have to have an optic,
True.
And you got to grab the gun just fine.
These would have been much better for that stage. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. That didn't bother me as much as I thought, but
yeah,
that was interesting. But yeah, I like these. They're accurate. They run. I have 5 of them now. 2 carry optics, 3 productions. Mm-hmm. Setup wise, I do a lot to it. Pretty much I get a bunch of Cajun parts. Mm-hmm. And basically what I'm trying to do is work the reset. So I don't have too much. I don't know if you can see.
Yep.
I leave a little bit, but I could take all that out because I hand fit the disco.
Okay.
And I used to fit it a lot closer, but then I like to prep coming into position. And at one match, I had an ND. It was in a safe direction, but I will admit I didn't intend for it to go off. And from that moment on, I said, all right, I give myself a little bit more slack. And I've never had a problem since.
You were aiming at a target, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was during a reload. It's very sensitive if you get it to that back wall. Yeah. I think my finger had just started coming down after the reload, and I was marrying it up. And because I was probably resetting my hand a little bit after the reload, I set it off, and it wasn't intended.
Yeah.
So I like to give myself a little bit more pre-travel. So I say that to anyone, you don't really need that much. You can marry it up and then break the trigger.
So what's the weight on the first pull and single action pull?
I've never actually weighed it. I know it's IPSC legal. So it's not as light as it could go.
Yeah.
I'll tell most people I run an 11.5 mainspring in the CZ. In the Tamfos, I ran a 13,
okay,
which puts me, well over the IPSC requirement.
Yeah.
So some people run like 8s, 8.5s and things, or cut coils. I honestly, the factory trigger is probably good enough for me. The weight doesn't bother me. What I really look for is the reset, how much pre-travel there is and over-travel. And I have no over-travel. I have a little bit of pre, so I can marry up my finger to the trigger coming in on a target. And then I have a real clean break. I know some people will roll the sears. I don't like that. I like when I intend for it to go off, I just want it to fall and break. So there is some things I've noticed about the CZs, and I'm going to release a video on this on my YouTube channel. But so let me see. I don't know if you can see this pin right here, that the retaining pin here.
Yep.
So that goes in underneath the sear cage, right? Which you can see the sear cage here in the back. And I ended up taking the pin out of the trigger here because I replaced this with a free floating pin. And that roll pin I put in here. It's a little bit longer than the factory one.
Okay.
All right, if you guys are still following me. So it pushes up on the bottom of the sear cage. And that takes any little rocking out of that cage. And what I notice is, like on a double, when I'm pulling, or even a single, I can kind of feel it. On some guns, just based on tolerances, and most people probably don't even notice till I said this, but I can feel that little rock. I call that creep, or people will use that term for trigger creep or whatever, mush. I wouldn't say it's mush, but more creep. Like I'm like, oh, it didn't break. I feel a little movement right before the break. That's usually the sear cage just kind of moving with the sear. Well, to get that play out, Hopkins taught me use this pin. It's a little bit longer. You're going to have to fit it because every gun's different. And it pushes up on the bottom of that sear cage. And that takes, basically, once you put that cage in, perfect fit, it won't move.
That's cool.
So that's honestly, I've had to do that at 1 out of 3 guns.
Okay.
So it's not every gun.
Yeah.
That's probably the most interesting thing to do on these guns. That, and I replace all my trigger return springs with CZ custom ones because I've broken a few CZ factory ones. So I don't trust them as much.
Right.
And that's honestly, in all fairness, that's on my dry fire gun, which I really work.
Yeah.
I've actually changed my dry fire. So I used to do the double pull, like Ben says, and then do like this, for every pull after. But now I will usually do this, put my safety up, because I can because I always pull my finger off the trigger anyways, and now I know where it's at every time. So I usually keep it in single action when I dry fire now.
Cool.
And I feel like it's helped me a little bit. It's helped me be a little bit more precise with that single action pull.
That's cool. Okay. So I know we didn't dive too far into it, but talking about that mental game, so coming from nationals and going into World Shoot, I know we talked offline about this, but what's your game plan for that, and why is focusing on that mental game so important?
Yeah, because I think it's battle of nutrition at World Shoot. Anytime you have a long match, any match over 1 day, there's a whole nother mental, in my opinion, mental aspect, because you go home and you think about your performance, you think about other people's performance just naturally, right? Because it's a competition, and I think the longer a match goes, there's the more opportunity for you to start to doubt yourself as an athlete, start to have ambition or wishes or regret. And all those negative thoughts just have opportunities to come in on a longer match, like the World Shoot.
Yeah.
So Nationals being and Pan American being multiple days, like those are opportunities to see how well you can stay in your game and your focus. And that's what Nationals and Pan American really served for me, is to really just work on my mental game, because it's hard to replicate that at home.
Yeah.
There are things I do in training to replicate that. Nowadays, I would say in the last 2 years, which has really helped me. I use usually shorter, more frequent training sessions. So like I already trained today. After this, I'm going to train again versus one long session, because I care more about my cold starts, and really helps me be accountable for that first 30 minutes, 40 minutes of my training, because that's probably more realistic of how I'm going to perform in a match.
Yep.
So I rather shoot, rather than go to the range like I used to for 4 hours and just grind it out. I now go for 30 minutes, maybe an hour if you include setup time and breakdown.
When you say
do that twice.
This is in your backyard.
Yes, during the week I shoot in my backyard. On the weekends, I usually work on more movement and more intricate things. some, at a club,
Okay.
usually Northern Virginia Gun Club, or I go with some friends to Fredericksburg.
Nice.
But yeah, on the weekdays, I work on my fundamentals a lot more because I have more of like a, I don't know, 5 by 30 yard bay, if you will, in my backyard with a berm. And it's just harder to move there. But, so I work on unique things. I usually break things down. So, you know, it's good to get the repetition in, throughout the week. And then I can go into the weekend and really work on some harder stuff.
Yeah. So okay, I watch your videos. Talk about the drills that you're running in the backyard, the hard leans, the no shoots, all
Yeah.
of the things. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I've talked to a lot of people that have been to World Shoot, Ben and Mason and Sal and Casey, and most recently I hosted Ben's class here, and I picked his brain a lot. And you know, I asked him, what at this point in time would you be working on? And I really respect what he says, and he said, work on some of that accuracy on some very tough shots, and I think I can read into why he probably said that is USPSA doesn't really test the accuracy to the level IPSC can.
Mhm.
I'm not saying like every shot is hard in IPSC, but they do have harder shots than you'll typically see in USPSA. And that's made, when I say harder shots, it's usually the partials cover up a little bit more, the distance, um, the shooting off balance was one of the things he said to work on. Um, usually when we have leans at 10 yards, that's negligible. I can get away with a lot there, even if, off balance and stuff, but like 20, 30, maybe a swinger, like a little bit harder, or a steel 6-inch plate, like we'll probably see a world shoot on the lean is a little bit different. So, and then low ports and high ports, we're pretty good about that in USPSA. It's just
Yeah.
something you don't see unless you go to majors as much, and it's usually like 1 or 2 stages.
Not at
I think,
nationals. You kidding? There was like a bajillion.
yeah, that was good. I'm glad they had ports, and I'm hoping
Yeah,
they, maybe some of the whoever, Shannon or whoever did some of the designing, used that to kind of prep some of the world shoot guys, right?
for sure.
And it was nice. We saw IPSC targets and stuff like that in there. But with that being said, so in my backyard, those are opportunities I can just work on leaning shots, kind of collect that data. I noticed some things, the day that you're speaking of,
Mhm.
that on the hard leans, I had a tendency to push through the A zone to the left. And I think um, I don't think that was vision. I think that was just, the way I was holding the gun and seeing the sights. Well, I guess vision, but not vision not looking at the spot on the target or transitioning.
Mhm.
Those are things I get the opportunity to do. I'll isolate it. I'll just shoot one target, and I just want to see. I don't want to rule everything else out. I don't want to be, did my eyes not get to where it needed to be, or did I overshoot the gun, not deaccelerate during my transition things. Just break it down, isolate it, see if there's a negative result, and then fix it.
Yeah.
And if you do that enough, you'll be pretty successful.
Okay. So for people like, not going world shoot, but just in general, like dry fire, live fire, what are some like items that test you more than just standing there and shooting a blank target? Like I noticed you had barrels and hardcover and all of that. Like what are those that are helpful?
Yeah, like if I wasn't going to world shoot, I'd probably be focusing more on fundamentals. I'll tell you like one tip that I do, and I think it's beneficial. I probably don't have all the science degree to really explain this, but a lot of people, ever since the stick up targets for dry fire came about, everybody will put those targets up on a wall, and they got scaled targets so you can replicate distance. I don't really like replicating distance on one focal plane.
Yeah.
All that means is the spot gets smaller, but your eye depth perception doesn't change. So what I do is I make little target stands out of like fault line,
Okay.
and I'll put scale targets on those and actually put those in my house with real depth, because then I can have my eyes go from staring at a small dot down my hallway at 10, 15 feet to 5 feet, and adjust and see. And one of the things that helped me do is pick up the speed on my vision. You know, it's hard to have a sense of that. Like you can't time that, but you can definitely see it in the results if you pick up how fast your eyes can move. And it's something Wansik and I have talked about. I noticed in the beginning of the year, I'm hindered. I'm like, look, my transitions are slowing down, but I feel like I'm applying all the fundamentals the same. And it's like, you just need to pick up, speed with your vision a little bit. So I'm trying to now find ways to do that in dry fire more. And that's one thing that I felt like was a deficiency is I just plastered all these up on like one wall here, scaled targets to replicate distance. Yet my eyes just had to stay on one focal plane. And now I don't do that. And a lot now I like to actually dry fire outside.
Okay.
So I'll buy like the little cardboard targets, put them on those same stands, bear hug 5 stands, go out my driveway, and I'll set up my dry fire session in my driveway.
Did you just say bear hug?
Yeah, I like grab them all up and go. You like my terminology, right? It's very technical. I'm going to tell Joel Park I need to write a few of these technical terms in his next book. Right? Let me get bear hug in here. Definitely worth $5 more on Amazon per copy. But
do you have neighbors?
I have a few, but they all shoot. I live in Virginia, America.
No,
like I'm surprised I don't hear shooting right now.
But you got to your driveway in your front yard, and you're dry firing at targets pointed at houses.
Well, I dry fire. I point the target at my garage, if you will.
Not like that. That would be
it's always pointed at my property. Yeah, I wouldn't point it at other people's houses driving by. But I live in a very quiet neighborhood.
Awesome.
bigger lots, and
yeah.
Honestly, the only thing I have to worry about is people hear me shooting and they want to come over and distract me. They want to shoot as well, and I feel bad. I'm like, all right, come shoot, but I really want to get my training in.
Yeah.
So that's
the problem.
But anyways, I like dry firing outside because the lighting's usually more accurate. I think that's more important with iron sights than it is dot, in my opinion. And it's just you can work on depth a little bit better. I can actually use real targets in dry fire in my backyard and stuff. Yeah. I don't know, and I like being outside. I don't really like being indoors.
Me either.
But that's one pointer I would give people is build natural depth up there. And even if you have stick up targets, usually you can do that. You can find a door in a hallway, put a target on that, open up the door, then have one further down the hallway. So you can still do it with the stick up targets, but you got to get a little bit more creative and use up the whole house and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. I do like little pieces of Post-it notes all over the place before when people will be like, what are those? Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Cool. Anything else you want to talk about with that?
No, I mean, I will tell you, like, most people, including myself, probably don't like working on the harder stuff that they're not good at. Mm-hmm. The more you get ambitious in this sport, the gains start getting smaller and smaller on, the fundamentals and stuff. The more and more, if you really want to grow, focus on those things that you hate doing. So for like me, example, I hate shooting weak hand and strong hand.
Yeah.
But like, I feel so good now. I almost do it in every single live fire practice session. At the end, I do the weak hand and strong hand. And, I'll probably post a video, but I was pretty proud. On the last day, we had a freestyle to strong hand stage with some partials at nationals. And I thought I crushed that for my skill level. Where I've been before that, I would have walked on that stage and that would have gave me nerves for the next 2 stages.
Right.
Like I would have been distraught. Like, oh, here, I got to shoot something that I know my skills completely lacking compared to the people I'm shooting with today. And that would have bothered me and broken my mental focus. So like, I was pretty proud that I had worked on that to the point where I stepped up to that stage and it was like any other stage. It was almost like taking a break because all I had to do was stand and deliver.
Right.
So in the past, that would have stressed me out for a stage or two. Now it's like I took a break, Yeah.
Just being prepared in general. I think that's the same with me with swingers, bobbers, and all that stuff used to really scare the crap out of me because we don't see them in my locals at all because we don't have them. But now I'm shooting more major matches. I'm like, that's normal. And now my mics are on wide open, perfect targets 3 feet away. But no, that's been nice because like you said, you will get anxious and then you're already set up for the stage of like failure almost.
Yeah, you want a high confidence. So like that's a clue. If you go up to a match and you're walking through a match and you're like unsure if you can make a shot, Like that's a clue. Write that note down. All right, tuxedo at 20 yards from the kneeling. I didn't like that. All right, then your next practice session, guess what you should be practicing? Like that, if you come to another match and have that same scenario and you're still wondering if you can make that shot, that's your fault.
Yep.
You know, you're just giving the field points in that manner because you had the opportunity to correct that.
Yep.
So like I actually get really excited now when I go to majors and I walk on a stage and there's like a moment where I'm like, ooh, that's tough, because I'm like, great, I get to address that in the next practice session, right? And you can't always foresee that or think that. Like, you know, I can run all the drills but it might change. You might, you know, I've seen for example, I've shot a lot of over the top swingers this year for some reason. Just a lot of the majors I went to were over the top one shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, at nationals, we had a swinger that came out and I could have trapped it.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I felt like for a split second in my mind, I was like, ooh, I haven't shot that in a while. You know, it's actually easier, in my opinion, than shooting over the top.
Yep.
But here, that's a deficiency. So guess what I'm going to be doing this weekend? Shooting some traps, you know, at distance, making sure like I can cash in those easy alphas. So like everybody should be hunting for those opportunities where things you don't like or that you get nervous on or break your concentration. Like those are like nice little nuggets to put in on a notepad, like Dave Murphy would do, and take them right to the practice session. You know, and then collect data. I see this from all the good shooters will walk and watch their scoring. It's not really because, you know, the ROs might make a bad call. I would say one target out of 1,000 matches, you know, 1,000 calls, they might make a mistake. You might catch it, but really that's free data. Like, oh, I'm over transitioning. I'm shooting Alpha Charlie because I'm just not, you know, seeing that sight come back down. I'm already starting to move the gun or something. Like that's a little adjustment you can make that could save you a dozen Charlies in the next two stages, right?
Yeah.
So like I see a lot of younger shooters not walking the stages and shooting. Like the buzz, you know, their last shot goes off, they immediately like think of a visual in their head of how that went. And I'm like, whoa, there's still work to be done. Like, so like I tell like some of my students, like, you better be going down range and looking at the targets, otherwise you probably don't care. Like, you know.
Yep. So talk about teaching actually with that. You know, I know you do instructing, and you know, does that actually help you too by teaching? Do you learn stuff as well?
Yes. I don't like learn new things, but like it keeps it fresh. And so, you know, I'm kind of new to the instructing. I just my time. So I've only been doing it for like 2 years, and I only have a couple students, and that's kind of, I don't really market it hard, do like big classes. But I talked to Mason about it, who, you know, is a professional instructor, Mason Lane, and you know, he said it will help you. And you know, I think he's reflecting on his own experiences. Um, you know, I think for me, it helped me like stay motivated. Like I enjoy giving back to people, and it gets me out there with a gun training, but breaks up the monotony of just focusing on yourself.
Right.
So yeah, I think you learn on things, and like explaining it just builds confidence. Like, you know, like teaching people the different site confirmations and stuff will just keep reinforcing the fundamentals. And there's not a lot of secret sauce out there. It's just people get better at the fundamentals than others, right? They put more time into it. So like, yeah, I think it does help you. I just don't do it enough to maybe see those huge gains like maybe Mason does and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just a time thing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, for people that don't know, what is and who are the Boneyard Group?
That's interesting.
What's the roster?
Yeah, there's like a dozen of us. So Boneyard started with a bunch of friends that just really got an Airbnb and traveled to majors together. So some of those friends are like, you're laughing because we do have a good time.
Yeah.
Casey Reed, probably, you know, a ringleader in this front because, you know, he's a wild man, and you get him in the wild and it gets interesting pretty quick. But yeah, Casey Reed, Mason Lane, Kaylee Lane, Phil Strader, myself, Luke, Lutman, Darren. There's a bunch I'm probably forgetting, and we every now and then we have some really good guests. But one of the cool things about the Boneyard is it's like an everyday thing. So we have a group text that pretty much, I've already gotten a couple. Pretty much doesn't stop. I'm not gonna lie. I was in London. It was probably very late here, and I started seeing texts come, and I was trying to keep it together because I was on mission and I had to focus. But yeah, it's around the clock. It never ends. Some of it's legit talk. A lot of it is just joking around, keeping the mood light. But I would say in that chat, we're thinking about shooting almost every day. I mean, it's an everyday thing. It's a big commitment.
Kind of our lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle. That's well said.
Yeah.
So, and then really we just, we travel to all the majors together. So like my major schedule is usually built around a lot of what, the team's going to do, if you will. And then it's fun to get to go places and shoot with your friends. Right.
Yep. So serious question here. Ready? Wayne or Shorzy?
Oh, I'm gonna go with Danger 5 and go with one that you didn't list.
No.
You haven't seen Danger 5 yet, have you?
No, you have to pick Shorzy or Wayne.
I think right now Shorzy.
Me too.
It's definitely funny. Yeah, it's funny watching with that crew too. Some of these shows, it's pretty funny because they'll take the shows right into the match. It'll be nationals, in case he'll be running around with a drumstick.
So I was going to ask you that. What's your favorite game stick here? Not drumstick, game stick.
Or game stick, yeah. Yeah, I think everyone should get game sticks at nationals. I think my recommendation to me.
You didn't think that of me. You literally turned like, does she deserve a game stick with a dead frickin' face?
Well, I didn't get to see you shoot. But I think everyone gets a game stick.
I shot 72% of Maximundi. I improved 15% from last year. And
15%?
15%.
So you track your stats year over year?
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. Improved. What do you test your improvement to?
Oh, I wrote a
whole more time into it this year?
I wrote a whole article. So I took a Mason Lane class. That was big.
Did you work on movement? Hold on. Did you work on movement with Mason?
Yeah, I mean, he went on some of that. I mean, it was mostly fundamentals because there wasn't a lot to move. But the movement is my biggest piece, not just with him, but when I'm in training here with a GM, a friend of mine. And yeah. But working on what I don't like. So it was hardcover, tuxedos, no shoots, mini poppers. But yeah, movement's been big for me. And then every single match, I didn't dedicate every time to PCC, but I did put a lot into it. Yeah. Yay.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks. So I deserved a game stick.
Yeah. And your equipment ran?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I had two issues.
No major issues?
2 small issues that wasn't fun on the speed shoot stage. That sucked, but I worked through it. Still had fun. I had 1 Charlie, I think, on that stage. But it threw me for a second, so I had to rack around out.
I feel like PCC, that's tough because the guns can be a little bit more finicky. And man, at a major match, that's just devastating.
Yeah. No, my gun ran. I was just a couple hiccups that weren't major, thank God. Last year I had problems, but PCCs are a beast. You have to find a working gun is 90% of the problem right there.
Yeah. And then do you have 2 of them or just 1?
Do I have 2? I have 2 primaries. So I have the Da Vinci is my primary. I have the Brecky is my backup. And then I have the one.
I like the colors.
This is Harry Potter. So for people that don't know, got all the engravings. I solemnly swear
that's pretty cool.
No good. You got your wand and your
Is that anodized?
It's Cerakoted, and then I don't know what he did. I think my buddy it's Creekside Custom.
That's Cerakote? I haven't seen a Cerakote with that little sheen to it. That's pretty cool.
Creekside Custom Lasering is my dude, and then he painted little footsteps from the Marauders map. Yeah, no, this is legit. And then he did my 3-gun Kenzie, so it's got all my logos on it. I like custom. Cool.
you can get a little bit more custom-y with the
Yeah.
PCC guns. Those are
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you. But we digress. But anyways, what I wanted to ask you next too about is like you don't have to go into it too much, but like what do you do for work? And talking about like the importance too when you pick guns. Like you had two of the same guns, right? I have two of the basically same guns. How important is that to stick to the same controls?
Um, for people that are professionals that are
Yeah.
also in the sport,
Yeah.
I would say starting out, I would stay very similar because there's a lot of thought process going. So like if you carry a Glock, I wouldn't go to a double single action starting out in USPSA. And that's not necessarily for familiarity. That's just because you're going to be processing so much. I wouldn't want that to affect you at work, which, if it could save your life, that matters more than any sport.
Yep.
But once you get to a high skill level, like you can put a bunch of different guns in my hands. Like I can process how that gun operates. Like I don't, you're not going to see me thinking my Glock does a double pull on the first pull. Like I know, but that takes time. You got to start being able to do things subconsciously with ease.
Yep.
And you'll know that, if you're still trying to get your gear right in USPSA, that's not the time to try something different if you're professional. Like still work on getting the ground. Like if you're missing targets in PSPA because you haven't figured out a stage plan yet and visualize it, don't switch to a different gun or a different platform. So for me, like I carry a Glock at work, a Glock 19, but I shoot a double single. You know, it doesn't bother me. I watch it, but there are some things that if I wasn't a professional, I probably would have changed. For example, I probably would have done bullets out,
Mm-hmm.
and your mag pouches where the bullets face outward versus forward.
Yep.
Because I feel like I can get a more comparable grip no matter where I'm at on my belt, and I like consistency. But at work, I don't carry them that way for many reasons. So like I still go bullets forward, and I do notice like when you get to that third or fourth pouch, you're not getting the same grip as your first pouch.
Yeah.
Um, that pretty much only bothers people for production. Um, all the other divisions you don't have to carry 4 or 5 mags, but
7,000.
that's the division I shoot, right?
Yep.
I don't think it matters what bullet you shoot. I mean, at work I'm shooting plus P's. None of them. I mean, unless I'm shooting an open gun, it's not going to feel like it is. Um, you know, Nowadays people at work can probably have options to shoot dot or iron sights, but I kind of probably side with JJ still on this one. I still like iron sights. Dot dots have advantages. The biggest advantage I usually see for carry optics and dot is low light, which we don't really experience in USPSA unless you're Luke. Um, but the dot, do you know what I'm talking
I
about
saw
on that
the
one?
video and then
Yeah.
yeah.
The dot's important for low light, and I'll be honest with you, that's probably the single biggest advantage for most professionals because shit usually hits the fan at nighttime in the military and law enforcement, right? So I really like that as a strength. And then there's a lot of studies and some issues with I won't get into it now, but with um, like night sights for iron sights and stuff, they're always glowing, which means people can see you in the dark. So there's some disadvantage to that. And then also, like, if you really need night sights, can you really identify your target? I mean, in law enforcement, we don't just spray and pray. We got to articulate, usually in court afterwards or with our internal affairs or whatnot, what we saw at the time we shot. So, like, when you start doing those things, like a flashlight becomes much more important than night sights. But so I do like the dot for low light. The problem is I just haven't found one that's as reliable. And then I carry conceal because I'm usually in a suit.
Yep.
So like it's just extra weight and extra bulk. It's a snag hazard for my draws. If I was like a SWAT team member or something, I got a drop leg holster. Maybe not as big of a deal there, But then again, that's probably a backup weapon. So like, you still need it. Like, so I think I side with JJ on this one, and I respect JJ because he was, I think, with Homeland Defense and a firearms instructor, and really thought about these things for many years, as well as my instructors. And there are a lot of advantages, but I'm just not there yet personally.
Yeah.
Where I do, there are some other advantages, and you have to factor it in. Is we have a lot of older officers and agents and stuff, and your eyes start to go. So, like, I think it helps them stay target focused and stuff like that. Helps them pick it up a little bit, be a little bit more accurate.
Yep.
So that's a great thing, because you when you get older, there's some things you can't correct with your eyes, right? So, and usually it's that near sight. That's why you see a lot of, people with reading glasses and stuff, right? Because you can't correct that yet. I hope by the time I'm that old, they find a way to do that. But so, like for iron sights, seeing 16 inches, that's tough to get maybe a crisp picture for like a precision shot or something like that, or even just to pick them up blurry enough to stay target focused to know they're aligned. So, like the dots are very cool in that regard. But I would never carry this on the job because it's just way too heavy.
Yeah.
I have to carry this every single day. But man, I do wish I had this in a gunfight because this is what I shoot more than my agency weapon, and I know it works. And I know what I can do with it.
Yeah.
Although I may not be correct on this, but I think CZ is the most widely used firearm handgun in law enforcement when you factor in the whole world, because they're really big in Europe.
In Europe, okay.
Glock has a big market share here in the United States, but when you think of the world in law enforcement, I think the SP01 is like one, maybe not so much with in the last 5 years with polymer guns, because of the weight factor. But I know when I first got into CZ, that was one of the facts that I saw. I was like, wow, that is the most used law enforcement weapon. So that's kind of cool fact, I think. I don't know if it's true today.
We'll just find out in the comments, I'm sure, at some point.
Yeah, go back to 2014 when I got my SP01, and that was a fact. At least I researched it. And the funny thing is, when I went to Italy and some other places, like I saw people carrying the SP01, I'm like, oh, I kind of like loosely validated with no real data. But I was like, I see it on a law enforcement officer, because you don't see it in the States. You don't see people carrying Shadow 2s on their hips on the States. With that being said, I like having a striker fire for law enforcement if I can rule out as many controls as possible, because stress does some funny things to the minds. I mean, I've seen people, for example, and our instructors make sure this is self-corrected beforehand, but I've seen officers show up to the range and they used to have the BlackBerry belt clips, and they put it as their first mag pouch, because that's where you carry your phone on your belt.
Yep.
I've literally seen an officer draw his BlackBerry. Back in the day, they had Blackberries. We had Blackberries, and try to shove it in his gun. So, like when you're this is during simunition training.
Yeah.
When you're put under stress, your body does some weird shit. So I try to keep it very simple for work. I try to keep my belt set up very similar to work, so my gun's in the same position. But as far as the gun controls, I don't have to use the safety.
Yeah.
I may switch to limited this year, or next year. I mean, just because honestly, production is kind of dying.
Yeah.
And I want to compete against the best, so I may go carry optics limited next year and just shoot production for like nationals and stuff. We'll see. If I make one more run at a world shoot, I don't know. If I did, it would probably have to be production, because that's my division. But there's a lot of good shooters coming up. Man, I'll tell you, looking at carry optics this year, it's scary how many good shooters are out there.
Yep.
So that's really interesting. I can't wait to shoot some carry optics.
Oh yeah. That's the division. You saw the stats that came out, I think today or yesterday, from USPSA.
Yeah.
Revo's like 1.9%.
Yeah.
I want to try it. So okay. Go ahead.
I think they should move to 15 rounds personally.
Yeah.
I'm not for changing production, but now I am. I mean, I wish I could keep it the same, but the bottom line is practical's in our name. Mm-hmm. Nobody carries 10 rounds anymore. And, people always made the argument, what about the states that can't have more than 10 round magazines? I looked at most of those states. Do you know what the most shot division is in most of those states? Open.
Okay.
So your argument is some states can't have 10 rounders, yet people choose to shoot open guns? Like, people don't, that's not that impacting is my point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think even the SIG P365, which I think SIG holds a 365 match, carries 13 rounds. So it's not practical anymore. And then we're designing stages in USPSA more for high cap because look, you got PCC, you got open, you know, really push the thresholds of high cap, right? Then you got limited high cap and carry optics 21 rounds or 22, right?
Yep.
So everyone's shooting high cap. So it's hard for these stage designers to make it fun for production and revolver, unfortunately, and single stack when they're trying to design for what most people are shooting. So like go to 15 rounds. I think it actually gets more technical. It aligns us with IPSC, so I don't have to train two different ways or think two different ways. If you shoot internationally, like I think it's time. I wish we didn't have to change it, but I think it's with carry optics coming on board. I think it's and PCC in the last couple of years. It's definitely we're going high cap, and that's more practical. That's what most people carry. You know, more than 10 rounds, and who gets? You know, I would say 90% of our membership or more probably gets more than 15 rounders in the box when they buy a gun these days.
Oh yeah.
So just I think that would be a nice evolution. And that might help production a little bit because I think people will enjoy shooting it with the type of courses they're seeing at their local matches, you know, versus having to do standing reloads or not having enough shots because they couldn't knock down the steel and having to do a standing reload and feel maybe a little embarrassed they have to stand there because they didn't get the steel. Like people like having that extra ammo because it helps them get through the course when they're first starting out, I think.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it gets more technical because now my transitions change or my entries and exits change because, you know, I might have to blend two positions. I might shoot on the move where I didn't shoot on the move because my round count was too risky. So it actually gets harder and more technical. And I think you'll see, like, for example, I think if we shot this Nationals with 15 rounds, you would see a lot more stage pondering at the super squad level.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to shoot that on the move? I mean, Jake Hetherington will shoot on the move even if he goes to 10 rounds. But everyone else will not. And I say that because Jake shot a course that was high risk, high reward. He shot on the move with a very low round count on a sequence, and it paid off, and he ended up getting 6 seconds on the super squad. But nobody else on the super squad shot it that way. And, you know, if memory serves me right, that's because he took a big risk there.
Yeah.
You know, so I think my point to that is even at the high level, you're going to see people be more challenged with 15 rounds because they might get aggressive where they wouldn't have. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And it'll even that playing field then if you're all shooting on the move at that point rather than just the one guy who's going to risk it. Yeah.
But I like to you know, with that said, I'm more conservative in that front. I don't like changing the rules. I wish we could just keep it the same, but
we've already changed it once, twice, a couple times.
Yeah, you know, the funny part is the weight limit thing. I almost feel like this gun's a little too heavy, which is why I don't use brass grips. It's a little nose heavy for me. You know, if I could change anything, I'd probably change this dust cover, make it a little lighter, and I'd probably get rid of the tri-top. I would round this off so I could do over-the-top pinching a little easier.
Yep.
But I get it. They had to save some weight, so the tri-top does save some weight, which is in the right place to save weight. But I just want to get rid of the little nose weight. Now, you can offset that with brass grips, but then I'm transitioning more weight.
Yep.
And I don't like that. So, you know, this gun for me is almost perfect. I would just reduce this dust cover, maybe take away the tri-top, and then, you know, probably keep everything else the same.
I like it.
Yeah, it's a blending of the Tamfo and the
blending. Since you're law enforcement, I wanted to talk about this a little bit. Like getting into prepping and home defense and like preparing with family, you know, what do you recommend people like kind of start with on having like a home defense plan, gear? Like what should they be looking at?
Yeah, so great question. It's kind of cool. I haven't got to talk about this. So for most people, and this kind of goes, I do protection for a living, so I go all around the world with some of our senior leaders, and we look at it from 360 coverage and go from one secure location to another. So we have a lot of these concepts, right? And one of them is being proactive. Like if you're already in a gunfight, you probably made mistakes or didn't take opportunity to take advantages to prevent that. So for example, I would tell people like for home defense, you have to have a system in place. I don't care about if the door kicks in, if a siren goes off. you should know if someone approaches your house before they get the opportunity to announce they've approached your house.
Mhm.
So, like with this day and age now, it's very convenient to get motion sensors,
Yep.
set like a geofence around your yard, and at like 10 o'clock at night, if someone walks in your driveway, you should get like a little chime in your house before they get up to your door, because like that early warning gives you time to prep. It might give you time to wake up, think consciously about what's going on. Why is my alarm going off? Was the flag flapping in the wind that set it off, or is somebody in my yard? Right?
Yep.
It'll give you that split second to regroup. Where's my flashlight, my gun, my phone? Right? Where are my loved ones?
Mhm.
You know, should I initiate the family emergency plan? Not. So like my first people for like home defense would be like early warning, and then that carries over to when you're out in town. So like when I'm out in town, like, you know, I can't help it but to know where my exits are when I
Yeah.
walk into places, and I always want to see the front door.
Yep.
So like if I go into like a bonefish restaurant,
Mhm.
I want my seat near the exit, and I want to be facing where the front door is. So like if
Oh, yeah.
someone comes through that front door and starts shooting, I know where my exit is, right?
My friends
And
have
some of
learned
that,
this about me. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like all early warning, early detection. Like don't put yourself in a situation, and your first thought should be, how fast can I get out of this situation without going into self-defense mode, right?
Yep.
Um, and that's where you should invest most of your time, because you do not want to be in a gunfight. Like prevent it, right? There are things you can do. If someone enters my property, the first thing I do is turn my lights on to let them know I know you're on my property,
Yeah.
or let them think that I know that, right?
Yep.
The second thing I will start doing is you announce yourself. You know, I know you're there. Like then they know, you know, they've lost the advantage, right?
Yep.
If they're still that aggressive to come in, well, then we get into the next level, right? You should have a family plan. That family plan should always be putting enough barriers between you and the threat, and not trying to engage, right? I think, you know, I watch on YouTube, as Ben would say, all these tactical promoters and stuff. Like, it's not fun to be in a gunfight. I never want to be in it.
Yeah.
Like, that's a last resort. So you will not see me clearing my house with an AR-15 and a flashlight. If I can hunker down in a room, put 5 barriers in front of me, gather my loved ones, and call 911.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, now I will tell you this. I have some tactics. So like my strategic plan will gather my loved ones, and I do a 1+1. So my loved ones are in one room behind me with an exit. Could be a window with a ladder. So like, and then I put myself in the room just outside that room. So my family knows if I start acting, if I start engaging, you start escaping,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm your last resort. So I call it 1+1.
Yeah.
So for me, that could be like, you know, I'm in my bedroom at nighttime. You know, I see someone get in my yard. I go and get my son, bring him into my bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I turn on my lights. I see if I can identify. The moment I feel like I know it is somebody. All right, we go in our mat. I say, get in the bathroom, open up the window, and drop the ladder. Don't wait for my commands. Right.
Yep.
If I start shooting and I tell you to evac, then like you're going. Like,
Yeah.
and you know where to go. You have a plan. You have your cell phone with you. You have a flashlight. You have your own pistol, and you're going to the neighbors, right? Because we know they're home, or you're going here. Uh, so like that's like some basic tactics, but don't start clearing your house. Like if you think someone entered your house, like call 911. Let the professionals come and engage, right? Um, you know, I also, you know, there's a lot of like self defense things like um, if you have windows to your front door and someone comes up to your door at 10 o'clock at night, like they shouldn't know that you're coming up to the door. You want to be able to approach your front door at nighttime without people knowing you're approaching it, right? You want to have a mechanism to visually know who's at your front door before you open it. Like these seem like fundamentals, but like I just caught my mom the other day, you know, like, Mom, why are your blinds open with the 2 windows on the side of your doors?
Yep.
And you didn't turn the light on. You don't even know who's at the front door. You have your Ring doorbell, but like it was so dark you couldn't even tell who it was.
Yep.
You know, it was an Amazon guy, because now it gets nighttime earlier. You know,
Yeah.
so it was an Amazon guy, but like you didn't know that.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So like these are the things. Like just, you know, give yourself time. Don't rush to the problem if one presents itself, and call the professionals. If they can intervene, only intervene as last attempt. So like that's my advice to a lot of people on the self defense. And then as far as like weapon selection and stuff, like, you know, make sure you train with what you use. That seems funny, but I know a lot of people just go out and buy a handgun and then
Yep.
they never shoot it. They figure out how to load it and that's enough to them. Um, it's like, no, go out and train with it, feel confident with it, feel comfortable. You know, I let my wife shoot a bunch of different guns to see what she liked, and she actually liked something that I didn't think she would like.
Yep.
You know, and I asked her, and it made sense to me. So, like, you can't think for other people. Like, let your loved ones try what works for them. My wife doesn't like my AR-15. It's a little heavy for her. She's about 4'8", you know, Filipino lady, and you know, as that weight gets a little further away from her frame, it's harder.
Yep.
Same thing with the shotgun. So I'm not going to put that in her hand. You know, she doesn't feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
If she doesn't feel comfortable with it on a controlled setting, how's she going to feel when her life's on the line, you know?
Okay.
So, like, just find what works for you, and then you'll see you'll evolve. Don't just accept that as you get into this industry and stuff. I think people will evolve and they'll adapt. A bit newer technology comes out, like it's kind of like a pursuit, and if it becomes a hobby for you, even better, right?
Yeah.
If it becomes a sport and fun, because now you're getting both rewards. You're growing skill sets that also help you in the self defense world. And that's why I really like the Second Amendment community, and I like the firearms industry, because, you know, a lot of the sporting events also prepare people to defend themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
You
want to
know,
ask you too on going back to the home defense too. Do you think like soft armor, hard body armor, what about like medical kits, stuff like that? I mean, do you have that kind of game plan for the family as well?
yeah, I do. So I'm really big on medical kits because I carry one on my day, and like we have a saying at work, we're more likely to use our medical kit than our sidearm.
Yep.
So like it's the first thing that goes on, because you know people can get injured for many more reasons than
Yeah.
a gunfight.
Oh, I know. Every day,
I think
right here.
last year I responded to 3 motorcyclists that went down that were more gruesome than some gunshots that you could see. You know, like. And I'm glad I had those medical supplies. Now you can improvise and stuff, but it's nice when you know you have gear that you can work with, that you've trained with. One thing I'll give like a little pro tip. I know there's a big debate on tourniquets. There are some quality ones out there. There's some certified ones. I like the cat tourniquet for work, but for my 3-year-old, that cat tourniquet's not going to work. His limbs are too small. So I actually have the rat tourniquet. And the thing I like about the rat tourniquet is it's my backup for work. So what I do is I lace that around my belt, and it's tucked under my belt. And the theory there is if I fall, I know I can always probably reach my belt buckle. I can just pull it out. Or my buddies know that that's where I have one and they can get it.
Right.
So that's a good backup. And then I carry a cat on me. But what I like about the rat tourniquet is it works on my son because it uses an elastic wrap method that my son has like a 2-inch arm, and it'll work on him being 3 years old.
Yeah.
So think about that from a family perspective. If you have smaller children, like these cat tourniquets aren't really designed for that. They're designed for, you know, thighs and legs of bigger people and arms of grown adults.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get really challenged to use that on anyone under 5. So I like the rat tourniquet or the SWAT T. I like the rat a little bit better because you can tie it off a little bit easier than the SWAT T. And after you get someone a tourniquet, you usually want to get them to a hospital or something.
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, want it coming off. So I like that, but there is a technique to the rat T. You know, you want to get 2 inches when you wrap it. So if you're wrapping over itself, the band is about the width of my finger. That's not going to be as effective. So you got to learn how to wrap that, but build like a wrap that's this thick, about 2 inches or 2 fingers wide, you know, around the arm, or maybe 3 if you can get it around an arm. I can probably get a 3-inch width around my wife. With me, I probably won't have enough material. I might have to do 2, and then get it high and tight. Right, that's the tactic with that. You know, people usually don't get it high enough. But, you know, medical supplies, you know, if you have loved ones that have illnesses, make sure you have that, like insulin and stuff on hand, because when people are induced with stress, usually those medical issues become real.
Yep.
So, like, you know,
if
you have it in,
yeah.
So, like, if my kitchen is near the front door or near, I would have to go into a danger area if I believe someone broke my house to get insulin for my loved one, you know, to get the 1+1 barrier I was talking about earlier,
right,
then I would probably have a small little fridge, and they make small ones. in my bedroom.
Yeah.
You know, like they're specialized for medicine. That way, like I don't have to leave my bedroom. Here's your insulin. If give it to them if something starts happening. So you got to think like that. So yeah, medical supplies. Those are the big ones. Bandages and stuff like that. That's probably not the time. You're just trying to stop major bleeding and keep the airway open.
And armor.
What's that?
And armor.
Armor. So one thing people need to remember is bullets go through walls, but most criminals don't understand that. So 9 out of 10 times they're not going to shoot through a wall. There's a famous video out there of an attorney coming out of the courthouse, and he had a newspaper in his hand, and he was on the steps, and a criminal came up to him, and it was just pure instinct. The attorney held the newspaper, and the criminal never shot. He was trying to get around the newspaper.
What?
Because most criminals don't think about it. They want a clear shot. They want to shoot at the individual, and all he had to do is shoot through the newspaper.
Wow.
But my point to that story is to be mindful of that, because nowadays there's a lot of video out there. Criminals can learn a lot very fast. The movies depicted it a lot better. You can watch movies. You'll see people shooting through walls, and John Wick and stuff, and Born Identity, he shoots through a door. So criminals may think they can do that as well, and it's effective to some degree, especially with rifle cartridges.
Yep.
So keep that in mind. But there's a difference between cover and concealment. But I think concealment's more important than body armor for home defense. If it's coming down to the point where you're needing body armor, you probably didn't take a lot of other tactics first.
Yeah.
Focus more on escaping and putting more between you on the concealment side, between you and the threat.
Yeah.
So before anyone ever gets to my son and child, they got to get through me in another room. There's two barriers there. But even if they started shooting through the walls, I mean, they're not going to know where they're at.
Yeah.
They're going to have to get pretty lucky, right? And then if they get through me, my wife and child have already escaped. You know what I mean? Now you got to hunt them down, right? Yeah. So that's more important than me putting a vest on my child. With that being said, I do have body armor.
Yeah.
I keep it in my car. Mm-hmm. Because I'm more concerned about active threats. So one of my favorite pieces of gear that goes everywhere with me, and it's both body armor for my family as well as medical supplies, is the Vertex sling bag.
Yep.
I wish I could go get it. It's in my car right now.
Say I have one somewhere.
Yeah, but what I like about that is I can carry a sidearm in it and use it as a draw. I can unzip it and with a sling, and it unfolds, and I have 2 levels of body armor that's actually bigger than my chest armor.
Yep.
I can put that around my son. If I'm in a car, I can grab that, open it up, and put it as a blanket on him. If I can't get out of Dodge, I'm trapped in a car or something in traffic or whatever. But you'll usually see me take that to larger events and things like that where I'm concerned about active shooters.
Yeah.
Even a grocery store, I'll take that and throw it in the cart. And then on the front side of that, all my medical supplies. And I've actually used that more times than thank God that I had to use the body armor. But that's usually my go-to. So, traffic accident, I grab that bag. I get down on my knees because most people are on the ground when you're providing medical aid. That's right there. I rip off the front panel. It's like a quick rip. And my tourniquets, my quick clot, everything's there. And then there's a little pocket underneath that I have a Magpul Ziploc bag. It's a Magpul version. You can do it with duct tape. I used to use that, duct tape and Ziploc for a long time. But I like the Magpul one. It holds up a little bit longer.
Is that the DACA pouch or DACA pouch? I don't know how to say that.
Yeah, it's like the DACA pouch. But I used to use Ziplocs with duct tape. You just put duct tape around a Ziploc and you have the same thing. But I think someone gave me that and I like it. But I use that. That's my second go-to. So I got to have 2 people that are down. I have to pull that out and go into my second set of supplies.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll tell people is car accidents are more prevalent than shootings. Yep. So you should be able, from a driver's seat, be able to reach all your medical supplies from the driver's seat without unbuckling. Because if you get in a bad car accident where you're going to need to provide aid to yourself to save your life or a loved one, chances are you're flipped upside down, you're buried, you can't get out. You need to be able to reach that. So one of the places that a lot of law enforcement will keep it is on the back of their headrest.
Hmm.
Have it right there. If you don't want to have a big medical pouch, at least have a tourniquet and some quick clot. Goes a long way. You can put that in your glove box. You can put that in your door. A lot of people will rubber band it to their visor.
Yep.
And then you
And
can close the visors.
we've seen more companies, I'll say that real quick, make like Molly stuff for the back of the passenger seat or the headrest now, which is really awesome because it integrates with everything that you have. But yeah.
Yeah, you want to be able to reach it. My favorite is the sun visor.
Yeah.
Because you can find stuff where you can molly it up top, but then you flip it up, and when people get in your car, they don't see you're all tactical cool. It's like all hidden.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want it accessible. I know a lot of people have med kits and it's in the trunk, and I'm like, that's good if you're providing aid for other people, but that's really there for you. And if you're stuck in your car, how are you going to get that?
Yeah.
Right?
I have one for me inside, and then I have my big med kit for when I go to shooting matches because I also need that. Yeah.
The other thing that most people don't think about, and I've actually had this happen to me. I got lucky, but I was in a car accident back when I was in the Marines, and I passed out, and my car caught on fire. I actually woke up when my windshield popped from the heat. But now I carry a fire extinguisher, and there's some nice ones out there now. You don't have to go get like the big canister ones. Even the small canister ones are big, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There's ones that look like flares. I'm trying to think of the name. I'll send it to you. You can comment it in the thing, but people are curious. But it looks like a flare, and you can usually put that. They sell tie downs for right beneath your driver's seat. So back in the old days, you would pull it to adjust the length of the car seat. You can put it right there. That's a great place because if you're trapped and your car's on fire and EMS is 1 or 2 minutes out, you need the ability to suppress that fire and or put it out. And some of these will run for quite a while now. And it's just the size of like an old Maglite flashlight, and you can seal that. So that's a very important piece of gear from a safety, because you're more likely to get in a car accident and be in that situation than you are an active shooter threat. It's just statistics, right?
Yep.
So be prepared for those things. Don't just, for self-defense isn't always bullets coming at you.
What about like a seatbelt, cutters, glass breaker, all that stuff?
Yeah, on the job, I have seatbelt cutters. I mean, a knife works.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, if you're using a normal fixed blade or any kind of folder to get somebody else out, be mindful of the tip of it. Shears are really nice. Like on duty, I carry shears, but off duty, I just carry a knife. I just know I have to be a little more conscious if I'm using it to get people out of a car seat or something, or a seatbelt. So usually what I'll do is I'll wrap my finger around the tip when I go in. So I'll use Leatherman's only because I don't know where my knife is, but it'll serve. But like, let's say I had to get someone out of a seatbelt that's trapped in an awkward position, and all I have is a fixed blade with this point, right? What I'll usually do is I'll put my finger like I'm grabbing a magazine on that point, and I will finesse my way underneath the seatbelt, and then I can pull towards me, right? That way I know I'm not going to stab them. So like, there's techniques you can use. Don't just go in there and you're stressed and freaking out. You're trying to get them out of the car and cut them. I mean, it's not going to probably kill them, but it's not going to be pleasant to cut them when they're already hurt.
Right.
So like, there's techniques. So I don't really carry that outside of work, because the knife can serve as that tool. But having a knife on you is very important on a daily basis.
I mean, how can we, like, as a shooting community, not put fear, I think, in people, but more normalize these type of conversations and normalize being prepared?
Normalize it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think knowing that you can defend yourself will actually liberate you and allow you to live free. Versus, I think when people, there's always going to be evil in society. When you realize that, you have two choices. You can rely on the government or you can rely on yourself. And I'll tell you, as a law enforcement professional, that, for the last 20 years have committed myself to protecting people. Like, I can't always get there fast enough, right? And neither can a lot. And in this day and age, unfortunately, with policing not being as popular politically, like, it's hard to recruit police officers. Like, I know one of the counties near me right now is less than 40% manned. And I just responded to a break-in for one of my senior leaders, and it took those police 2 hours to get there. Now, somebody wasn't in the house, but just to do the crime scene. I said, why did it take so long, guys? I was like, I called you, I beat you there.
Yeah.
And I was responding from my house.
Yep.
Like, I live an hour away.
Yeah.
And they're like, look, shift change. We only have 7 people on shift for the whole county. We just weren't in a great location. We had more calls. And I said, wow, we're really hurting in the community right now. So, like,
Yep.
you know, to not live in fear, you got to take some of that self-defense in your own hands, right? You got to train, you got to think about it, you got to be prepared, and then you can go out in life knowing that you're ready.
Yeah.
And then be free, not having to worry about what if, right? So, like, my wife and I, we don't think about it consciously, but subconsciously, if there's an active shooter in the grocery store, she knows exactly what to do. She hears the shots, she moves away from the fire, and she goes to the place where she knows there's more likely exits, or goes to, if she's in the front of the store and can't get out because of some reason, go in. She knows she's got to get barriers between her and the threat, and she's gonna consciously start listening to where the threat is and move away from it. She's not gonna like just hide or go in the fetal position, which is what I give her case studies so she can mentally be prepared for how she may respond. She may drop to the fetal the first shot,
Yeah.
but then I'm hoping my training kicks into her. It's like, all right, now move.
Mm-hmm.
You can't stay there. Move away.
Yeah.
You always should be looking to move away, right? From the threat. So, like, she knows all that. But when we go out to the grocery store, before we go to the grocery store, I don't like say that to her. But, like, I think she feels more comfortable. She knows what to do. So when she sees it on TV, an active shooter at a Walmart, she knows she can look at that differently. She doesn't look at that as just she's a sheep, like, oh, that could have been me in the fetal position that got shot. She knows, no, I know what action to take, and I'm going to, give myself and our son a higher risk of surviving.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, I'm trying to get her into USPSA and get better with the firearms and stuff like that. She really enjoys it.
Yeah.
So hopefully I can get her into the sport and have fun with it. That's another way is cross training in the sport of shooting. So, I like all the instructors out there, other than like Ben that teach more tactics. You see people, getting in the tactical gear and stuff like that. And some may be trained to go in the military and other stuff, and that's great. But, like, I like USPSA, the sport of it, because, like, then you can enjoy it. But, like, the byproduct of that is you're getting better for when you carry self-defense wise. Yep. But, like, you didn't have to have all the stress and fear, or, like, that wasn't the motive. You were out there to have fun. So, like, you can train and have fun without, like, and then the byproduct is you're more prepared for self-defense. So that's why I like USPSA. I would get my wife into USPSA more than I would send her to, like, a tactical instructor. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that, to me, that's just going to stress her out. She's going to be thinking the whole time in their tactics and threats. And but what's the point? I want her to go there, like Ben would say. I just want her to learn how to deploy the weapon. Yeah. I'll teach her the mindset, and we'll put that to bed, make it a subconscious thought. I want her to become more skillful, but enjoy it at the same time. Yeah, and that's why I love USPSA for that.
Yeah, I mean, everything is induced, not to the point where the active shooter, but you've got the beep, and then you're like, oh God, I got to grab my gun. Oh my gosh, how do I reload? What just happened? It's a blank mind. And when I teach too, it's I see a lot of Shield Easies now in the market, and I can't tell you how many times they get to class. It's shooting time, and they're very nervous. They haven't shot in a while, and they're safetying themselves, whether thumb safety, they don't have the right grip. And that's exactly what's going to happen if you're not out there shooting, practicing, getting the fundamentals down. So see that a lot. But yeah, I think USPSA, it's practical in that sense, is that subconscious, like you're saying.
And then I'll end on this note for the self-defense part is I always tell people, if you're going to get a gun and you're new to it, the first thing you need to learn is gun safety and get a safe. Yeah. More people, you're more likely probably to get shot by your own gun than you are to actually use it in a gunfight. And that's just because you have kids. Even if you don't have kids and you have a holiday party and kids come over your house, they get curious, So you got to, like, protect your firearm, lock it up in a safe. So, like, we have 2 Voltex life pods in our nightstands. And then I have a big weapon safe in the basement for, like, the more gamesmanship, like my hunting rifles and stuff like that. Yep. Like, but it's protected. Like, nobody can get into it. And then it's out of sight, out of mind as well, which is a great strategy. But, I always get fearful of, like, and then teaching gun education. I always get fearful of my son Because like, yeah, while it's harder for him to get a hold of ammo and a gun in my house because they're separated and locked up,
Mhm.
what if he goes to someone else's house? So like, I'm already teaching him as an early age. I don't think he understands the difference between a Nerf gun and a real gun 100%, but he understands not to touch my guns, that he can touch his toy guns, and there's a difference between those two guns. He might not be able to articulate at 3-year-olds that there's a difference, but he knows there's discipline there. And then I'm teaching him gun fundamentals already. And, the only thing I have to battle is his attention span, but he understands commands. So he understands make ready, show that safe. He knows what to do, and he understands the concept of it. And I teach it with Nerf gun.
Yeah.
And then I'm teaching him, the harder part is teaching him not to flag himself or flag others, because like he's trying to play with the Nerf guns with people and play with his other friends.
Right.
So like we're trying to teach him there's 2 different modes. So like when I dry fire, he has to follow all the safety rules of not pointing the gun at me or himself, the muzzle, while we're dry firing. But then when we go into play, he'll ask me, he'll look at me, he's like, playtime? I'm like, yeah, then we can play with the Nerf guns.
Yeah.
And that's just so he understands there's a set of rules. Like it's a toy, but like at some point in time, you're going to know what rules are.
Yep.
And don't point these things. And I'm trying to teach him at our age, because like if he goes over some kid's house and that kid brings a real gun, I want my kid at 3-0 say to tell me like, hey, he has a gun.
Yep.
The one that you told me not to play with.
Yep.
So teach people, because I know some family members that have lost a loved one due to gun safety in their own house, unintentional, and it's just devastating, because that you could just prevented that with just good education.
Yeah. No, I have family members that that hasn't happened yet. But we are with the replica guns, the play guns, just teaching. We're not pointing those at people, because at that young
and they're
age,
toys, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Even though toys, like, I mean, that's what we're fearful of, though, is that they don't know the difference. They don't have that.
Yeah. You have to teach that. You absolutely do. If you have guns in the house and you have kids, they have to understand black and white, that those are 2 different things, even though they look the same.
Yep.
And then I keep them out of sight. My son doesn't get the opportunity to, other than when my duty weapon's on my hip going to and from work, he doesn't really get to see them other than when I dry fire and stuff. And he knows he doesn't walk in front of the line, even when we dry fire and stuff like that. And he's learning already. So my point is just teach your kids early on. Curiosity will end up hurting them, if not under your supervision, when they're not under your supervision.
Yep.
And then same thing with cleaning your firearms. Don't get complacent. I think, I've been pretty good with that. Like, my fear is also people get complacent with guns. They've owned guns for 5-6 years. I have some family members that I have to remind about that. Like, did you clear your gun before you start cleaning it? Like, yeah, you just pulled out the safe, but it's an all or none thing. Either you're all in. There's no half-ass in gun safety. Like, don't ever assume.
I think that's what happens in the gun world, though, in the competition world. I've seen that, and it's this speed, unload, show, clear, holster, and like we're done, and we're like, holy cow, like, can we process that for a second? And that's when we see the ADs and the unload, show, clear, and all of this stuff where we're getting complacent, and we're around them more often, so we're more likely to have that problem.
Yeah, I'm probably, that you just said that, I probably get a little too unconscious unload, show, clear. I need to make it a little bit more of a conscious effort.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I'm getting at. So like, even me who's been shooting a while, when you just said that, I thought about myself.
Yep.
And there are times where I think I go through the motions, but I think it needs to be a little bit more conscious effort, right?
It's not a lot. As an RO, I've seen the unload, show, clear holster, and they're already putting their ears off and walking down range when I'm still like looking at their holster, like, is the range clear? I don't know. So, anyways, this has been awesome. I wanted to talk about that. I didn't get to tell you that or prep you on that, which is my favorite part, because I wanted to hear all of that. Thank you.
Yeah, if you ever want to have like another show, talk a little bit more about like the home protection, self-defense, I can
absolutely
kind of offer people a lot more. We'll see if your followers want a little more specific on that.
Yeah.
We can go in more depth. It's interesting. I don't mind sharing it. None of it's proprietary. They're just, it's just they're tactics that are proven.
I want the fire extinguisher. I need a link to that when you find that. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, I gotta send that. Here it is. Element E50.
Okay.
See, like Maglite flash or a little flare.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so those are cool. You can, we put them in our cruisers and our cars right below the driver's seat. They work really really well.
Awesome. Well,
So,
Matt, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to mention before we close out? And then you can leave your social media handles for people to find you.
it's just MN shooting. I'm gonna, just for everyone, I'm gonna try. I think Mason and I are gonna try and do a lot of streaming at World Shoot so people can see it. I don't know what their media out footprint's gonna be. Are they gonna have a lot going on YouTube from IPSC official? Usually they do really good promo videos afterwards. I don't know live. So I know the whole team there is going to try and do their best to stream it for people. So that'll most likely be on Instagram and YouTube the most, if I had to guess. So we'll try to probably hashtag that World Shoot 2022 or something like that.
I like it.
Yeah. So that'd be kind of cool to follow, because I wish I would have known about it the last World Shoot. I would have probably paid a little bit more attention to it. And I know there's a lot of people interested in the World Shoot. Yeah. I've had a lot of new shooters come up and say, how do you qualify and stuff like that. So I'll probably do, like, on my YouTube channel a lot more after World Shoot to get people prepped for that, because we'll go right into a points year for qualification.
Yeah.
And I think I always recommend people should shoot international matches. They're not as intimidating. One thing I feel like USPSA could do a little bit more outreach. I know that's not their mission. Their mission's here in the United States, but they are part of the IPSC community as North American region and stuff. And I think they could encourage a little bit more international shooting and be a little bit more helpful for shooters to, maybe a link on their webpage on specs. But I know, like, all the good shooters are very sociable and very supportive of the community. So, like, if you ever want to ask me or anyone, well, how do you get international? How do you shoot? What's involved? What's IPSC like? What are the rules? Feel free to reach out to me. I'll IM you back and answer. And if I don't know, I probably know someone that knows the answer.
Yeah, for sure we do. Awesome. Matt, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing this. And I've had fun, with the Boneyard crew for sure. So, and thank you for letting me have a game stick.
Yeah, we'll get you a game stick next time too. When's our next match together? What's your next major?
I don't know. Next year. Well, I'm shooting 3 guns, so you don't shoot that.
You gonna shoot Puerto Rico?
I can't shoot the Puerto Rico one. I'm shooting the Extreme Euro at Manny and Gorka. I can't go.
All right, I'll see you at Extreme Euro.
Okay, yeah, because I can't go shot show that one and Puerto Rico back to back. That's too much. I'd love to.
Maybe we can do something live, a follow up at Extreme Euro.
Oh, we could totally do that. Yes.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Yeah, absolutely. Go follow him online. If you have questions about anything, reach out to Matt. He's awesome. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to the Reticle Up podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Follow along on social media at Reticle Up or 3 Gun Kenzie.